My name is Helen Marks. I am 67 years old, a retired small business owner, and a grandmother. For 3 decades, I have been the quiet backbone of this family. I never imagined a single sheet of paper could slice through every thread we had left. It was Christmas Eve at my mother's house. The tree glowed with gold lights. The smell of roast turkey drifted from the kitchen. My sister's children darted between rooms, half whispering their secrets. I sat on the couch near the fireplace, a cup of tea cooling in my hands, watching my granddaughter Emily carry a tray of ginger cookies toward the dining table. She was wearing the navy dress she had saved for months to buy. She looked older than 15 in it. Her eyes met her cousin Lydia's across the room. Lydia, my niece, stood beside her husband Jake, laughing at something his mother had just said. But when she saw Emily, her smile froze. She glanced away, busying herself with her champagne flute. 30 years of holding a family together. I never thought one envelope could unravel it all. 3 weeks earlier, I had been in my own kitchen, stirring honey into my tea when the envelope arrived. Heavy cream cardstock, gold embossing, the faint scent of lavender. I smiled. I knew it was Lydia's wedding invitation. Emily was in the living room humming to herself. I set down my cup, slit the wax seal, and pulled out the card. It read, in beautiful cursive, "The honor of your presence is requested. Mrs. Helen Marks and guest." I stared at the line. No Emily. No mention at all of my granddaughter, the girl who had fed Lydia's cat while she vacationed in Florida, who had made her a scrapbook for her 21st birthday, who called her the cool aunt before she got engaged. Emily peeked over my shoulder. Is that it? The wedding invite? Her voice bubbled with excitement. Then her eyes searched the paper. The brightness in her face dimmed. She didn't ask why her name wasn't there. She didn't have to. I held the phone in my hand for a full minute before dialing. Lydia answered on the second ring. "Dee Dee," she said, still using the nickname she had given me as a child. "Did you get it?" I did. "Lydia, there must be some mistake. Emily's not listed." A pause. Then, "There's no mistake. The wedding is adults only. No one under 18. I could hear a man's voice in the background. Jake, low and clipped. Lydia's tone hardened. "It's nothing personal. Jake's family. They have certain standards. They want everything sophisticated. No kids. Emily is 15, not 5. She knows how to behave. It's not about behavior. It's the vibe, the setting. We've already told everyone. I hope you understand." I did understand. I understood she was choosing to keep her own niece out to please her husband's family. My thumb pressed the phone tighter to my ear. In that moment, I could have argued, begged, reminded her of the winters I bought her coats, the nights I stayed up when she was sick, the tuition payment I quietly made so she wouldn't have to drop out of college. But I didn't. Instead, I took a breath and said, "Then we won't be there." Silence crackled down the line. Finally, she said, "I'm sorry you feel that way," and hung up. I stood in my quiet kitchen, the scent of cooling tea in the air, the envelope still open on the counter. Emily's bedroom door was shut. In that stillness, I decided I would not protest. But when Christmas came, I would make one quiet move and let the truth speak for itself. I am Helen Marks, 67, a widow, and a retired co-owner of a small engine repair shop. For years, I balanced spark plugs and payroll, placed parts orders, and locked up at dusk while Pete, my husband, rinsed grease from his hands at the outdoor sink. When cancer took him, the shop went to our older son, and the house fell quiet. It is quiet still, except for my granddaughter Emily, 15, who lives with me on the edge of Columbus in a cedar-sided house with a small porch and a stubborn screen door. I raised 2 boys into decent men, though decency is a habit you repeat, not a medal you win. The younger, Michael, is Emily's father, a long-haul trucker who sleeps more nights under sodium lights than under a roof. Emily's mother remarried and moved 2 states away. Postcards in spring, a call, some Christmases if the lines are kind. Emily chose steadiness over distance. She chose my house. Her room smells of vanilla lotion and notebook paper. Her laughter climbs the stairs and wakes the frames. Taking in children is not new to me. Years ago, my sister June died from breast cancer. Her little girl, Lydia, came to me with a backpack and a silence heavier than the backpack. She was 7, and sleep would not come unless a radio whispered beside her bed. I taught her to tie bootlaces, soften butter without melting it, and ask for help before things were on fire. It was a season made of lists and small victories. That first winter after the funeral, I knit a sky blue wool coat with deep pockets. Lydia chose the buttons herself, round and glossy like marbles. She kept real marbles in one pocket and a folded photo of her mother in the other. When snow blew sideways across the school lot, she ran to me in that bright coat, cheeks raw and eyes shining. In the photo on my mantle, she wears it with the chin tilted up, as if courage could be learned by posture. Another photo sits beside it. Emily, 3 years old, stands on a kitchen chair while Lydia, 11, pretends to teach her how to whisk eggs. A metal bowl anchors the moment. Flour dusts the air like a small weather system. Lives braid themselves together one chore at a time. I learned long ago that love is not a speech. It is a list, and the list is mostly errands nobody sees. Emily works weekends at Sweet Magnolia Bakery on Main. She is careful with pastry boxes and writes order numbers in straight columns. She tucks her tips into an envelope inside a paperback and counts them at the kitchen table with her tongue pressed to her lip. She used that money to buy a navy dress because Lydia once said navy photographs better than black. She draws floor plans in the margins of homework and talks about the future in the tense of certainty. When I pass my road test. When I get a campus job. When I pay you back. My mother is 88. People call her the peacemaker, which is not the same as fair. She thinks family harmony is a souffle. No sudden movements, no raised voices, and for heaven's sake, no truth that might collapse the rise. She loves Lydia loudly. She loves Emily quietly. She loves me best when I agree with her, which is less often now. When hard news arrives, she says, "Be gracious." I have grown suspicious of that phrase. It is the rug under which women sweep their own names. Before the invitation arrived, I met Lydia's fiancé twice. Jake comes from a family that treats life like a club with a dress code. His shirts look pinned at the back. He compliments the help and never hears their answers. At dinner, he spoke about venues and lighting and a string quartet that refuses anything written after 1979. His mother, with a smile that never touched her eyelids, said children run in photographs. The line tried to be a joke and still expected applause. Jake smiled as if the line were his. I try not to build villains out of people I barely know. Rooms shape people. He was raised in one that values polish over pulse. Still, I know control when it arrives dressed as elegance. It stands too straight and smiles only with its teeth. After the engagement, Lydia began to mirror that posture. Saturday coffee at my kitchen table became brunches with wait lists and hosts who use first names like handles. She used to call to ask how to clean a cast iron pan. Now she texts links for dresses she will never wear twice. I answered anyway. Answering is the muscle memory of motherhood. Our house keeps a different rhythm. On the refrigerator, a magnet shaped like Ohio holds up grocery lists and a faded photo strip. Behind the magnet sits a spare key to the shop, habit from years when someone always forgot something. On the mantle, Pete kisses a trout he swore he would release and then did not. The back door sticks in humid weather. Everyone who belongs knows to lift before turning. Homes are made as much by knowing where things stick as by paint colors. Under my bed, a shoebox holds receipts for things nobody knows I paid. There is the copay for Emily's inhaler when her lungs were fussy, the reinstatement fee when Michael needed his license clean, and a semester of Lydia's tuition when her aid fell through. I kept the paper because paper remembers when people forget. The box is elastic with quiet rescues. It never brags, and it never breaks. After Pete died, I learned to read contracts without flinching, to ask questions without apologizing, and to put my name on every deed and account. The law is drier than grief, yet it grips faster. I set up a small trust for Emily and added to it in careful inches. Banks understand signatures. Mine is steady even when my hands are not. Paperwork is not romance. It is shelter. Emily and I live on rituals that keep the floor warm. Saturday peaches at the farmer's market. Baseball on the radio when the signal cooperates. Hemming a neighbor's dress while Emily sketches a better bakery layout with arrows for airflow. Some evenings, she braids my hair and asks for stories about Pete. I tell her the shop flooded once, and he laughed while the sump pump screamed, that he left a poker game because the buy-in was grocery money. Decency, I tell her, is not glamorous. It is maintenance. She nods like she already knew. All of this is why the envelope did not land in a vacuum. It landed on a table, where we eat soup with sleeves pushed up and pay bills on time. It landed in a house that has kept people warm. It landed on a life built of lists, receipts, and promises kept. So when Lydia chose a rule that erased Emily, I recognized its shape. I have felt that hand on women's backs for years, pressing while whispering, "Be gracious." I prefer honest to gracious. I am Helen Marks. I am a widow and a grandmother. I can knit a coat and close a checking account. I do not raise my voice. I raise my standards. If a room forgets who built it, I remember. Emily stood in my doorway, holding the navy dress to her chest like a life vest. The tag still hung from the sleeve. The tissue paper had fallen around her feet like shed skin. She did not ask a question. She had read the invitation. Our eyes met for a fraction. Then she turned, slipped past me in the hall, and closed her bedroom door with care, as if noise itself might crack something inside her. I stayed where I was, palms flat on the frame. From the other side came the smallest sounds, a zipper, a drawer, fabric settling. On the carpet by my shoe lay a loose blue button, glossy as a raindrop. I bent, pocketed it, and told myself to let her keep her room and her feelings. Space is also a kind of shelter. I could have knocked. I could have started listing all the reasons she was worthy, all the times she had cared for others, like a grown woman in a small body. Instead, I went downstairs and filled the kettle. Steam rose, breath steadied. The house held its quiet like a secret it promised not to tell. Being told you do not fit a room is a language I know. Years ago, When Pete was alive and the shop was paying just enough to be called a business, we were invited to a hospital fundraiser at a country club. I wore a floral dress and sensible heels. Pete wore his best jacket with the sleeves a touch too long. At the entrance, a woman with perfect hair looked at my shoes and then at her list. Her smile thinned. "Inside," she said, "the floor is antique, stilettos only." I looked down at my practical heels and understood what she meant, which had nothing to do with wood. We stood at the threshold while laughter from inside poured over us like heat through a cracked door. A man from Pete's supplier waved. The hostess touched his elbow and turned him the other way. Pete's hand found mine. He squeezed and whispered that we could leave and get chili dogs. The woman with the list said, "Be gracious. Thank you for understanding." I learned that night how a rule can arrive dressed as preservation and still be a blade. We drove to a roadside stand, ate in the truck, and Pete kissed mustard from my thumb. It was not tragedy, but the cut remembered its place. Morning came. The house was washed in the pale blue that forgives corners. I set 2 mugs beside the kettle and wrote notes on an old envelope. Bank, trust binder, checkbook. The invitation lay face down on the table, wax seal broken like a coin split in half. I tucked the seal into the shoebox under my bed, where I keep receipts for rescues that never introduce themselves. At the bank, the parking lot still wore dew. Inside, the air tasted of lemon polish and printer ink. A young teller with a neat bun greeted me by name. I have been depositing small amounts for so long that my signature is a familiar shape in that building. I slid my personal check across and asked to cancel and reissue the amount as a certified cashier's check to Emily's education account. The teller glanced at the memo line. I had already written the date and a single word. For dignity. She did not comment. Good training teaches people where not to look. She printed the cashier's check. The paper was heavy, the font officious, the kind that speaks in full sentences. I endorsed it into Emily's 529. The account nickname on screen read Maple Tree. I picked that name because those trees know when to let go and when to root deeper. The manager waved from his glass cube. We had signed the trust documents there the spring after Pete died. The law does not hug you. It holds you in place. I thanked the teller. She clipped the receipt to a white card and slipped it into an envelope. On the back, I wrote a grocery list. Produce, detergent, thread. Life insists on errands even when you are moving a boundary. Outside, I sat in the car and looked at my hands. They have more stories than jewelry. The wedding band I had resized after chemo is gone now, sitting in a velvet box for Emily someday if she wants it. What I had just done was not punishment, it was reallocation. Love is a budget. You fund what is faithful. At home, I opened my email. Subject line, RSVP. The message was short, clear as kind. I typed, Lydia, thank you for the invitation. If Emily is not welcome, I will not be there. Wishing you both happiness. Helen. I read it once aloud, tone steady. No flares, no thorns. Then I pressed send and felt the small click like a door choosing its frame. No reply arrived. That is also a reply. Silence is a container. What you put in it becomes louder. I set my phone face down and made soup. Onions surrendered to butter. Carrots softened. Broth rose like an old hymn. Emily came into the kitchen in sweatpants, hair pulled up, no mascara. She asked if she could take a walk. I said yes and handed her a scarf. Winter stands in doorways even when the sun performs friendliness. The phone rang just after she left. My mother's number appeared. I braced the handset with my shoulder and kept stirring. She began without a greeting. When my mother believes she is saving the ship, she forgets salutations. She had talked to Lydia. She heard about my email. She said I was making a scene. One day, she said. One day does not matter. Be gracious. Be supportive. Do not teach that girl to break the peace. I listened because respect is not the same as agreement. Then I set down the spoon and answered. One day like that teaches Emily she is not worthy of a seat at the table. I will not let that happen. If the price of peace is her self-worth, it is too expensive. My mother inhaled. The line clicked like a jaw. She tried again with history, family traditions, the burden of being older and wiser. I kept my voice low and steady. No courtroom, no sermon. I said what I believed and did not repeat it. After we hung up, I took the blue button from my pocket and placed it in the sugar jar, where I keep other small proofs that something once fit. I wrote Lydia's name on an index card and slid it under the album I had not yet assembled. The house was still. Milo thumped his tail under the table. The soup kept its promise. I did not announce my decision to anyone else. Announcements are for parades. I washed the pot. I folded the dish towel. I watched the winter light shift across the counter like a slow tide. Somewhere downtown, a venue coordinator was counting chairs. Somewhere across town, a teenager was counting hours until a feeling stopped stinging. My work was to hold us both to the truth of what we deserved, and to do it without fireworks. Christmas would come. I would bring one quiet thing and set it down. The rest would take care of itself. The morning of Lydia's wedding arrived sharp and polished, the kind of winter light that makes even bare trees look dressed. Emily came down the stairs in her sneakers and a sweater, the navy dress back in the closet where hope keeps its formal wear. She asked if I still wanted to catch the early movie. I said yes and handed her a pair of gloves. Ceremony is not the only way to mark a day. Across town, under chandeliers I would later see in photos, a hotel ballroom hummed. I imagined the final checklists, the florist misting roses, the quartet tuning string by string. Someone pinned place cards by pedigree. Someone whispered that children smudge lenses and bend timelines. In another life, I might have stood near the back, counting bites and minutes, willing myself small so Emily could be large. In this life, I bought 2 matinee tickets with senior pricing and asked for extra napkins. The theater smelled like butter, and the carpet remembered 1,000 shoes. Emily chose seats in the middle, a little left of center. Previews flashed promises. She laughed at a ridiculous trailer and leaned toward me to whisper which actor used to come into the bakery for day-old croissants. I watched her profile glow blue and gold. 15 is a lighthouse. It does not know yet how many ships it will save. While the bride finished her makeup, the movie's first scene poured across the screen. A city at night. A violin line like a thin wire. Emily reached into the bag of popcorn and handed me the first handful without looking away. The way she does small things is how she does everything. Careful, generous, unannounced. My phone buzzed once, and I muted it. Whatever the message was could wait until the credits were brave enough to roll. Somewhere under those chandeliers, Lydia probably held a bouquet, and the room held its breath. I tried not to translate that room's breath into my granddaughter's worth. Rules are not truth. They are choices embroidered to look like truth. On the screen, a character ran toward a future. In the ballroom, my niece walked toward a man. I let the film do the work of keeping time. Emily laughed twice in the same minute and clapped once without thinking. When the hero made the wrong choice, she groaned softly and bumped my shoulder with hers. We shared the last of the soda, and the salt stuck to our thumbs. It was easy. It was ordinary. It was ours. After the credits, we stepped into the cold. The light was brighter than it had any right to be. At the corner, we bought 2 burgers from a truck that knows my face. The owner calls me Miss Helen and insists fries cure nearly everything worth curing. Emily ate leaning on the hood of my car, hair pulled through a knit cap. Grease traced a shining line on the paper. Ketchup found the edge of her glove, and she laughed at herself. I kept a packet of wipes in the glove box because preparation is a form of love. We drove to the nursery on Maple, the one that keeps a heated greenhouse through winter. Inside, the air fogged my glasses and smelled like soil and lemon. Emily lifted a clay pot of red geraniums. The blooms were stubborn and cheerful, exactly wrong for a ballroom and exactly right for our porch. She read the care tag and recited it like a spell. Bright light. Water when dry. Pinchback spent blossoms. She tucked the pot in her lap, as if warmth could root faster that way. By mid-afternoon, a photo would have been taken of Lydia under a spray of crystal, her smile pinned as neatly as her veil. Wine would have been poured by people whose names were on schedules, not guest lists. Toasts would have praised the future while ignoring the present absence of a girl in a navy dress. I did not need to stand witness to understand the shape of it. Absence can be felt from anywhere. We stopped for milk and thread, the kind of errands that never cancel themselves. At the register, Emily counted coins from the same envelope she uses for tips. She asked if we could stop by the library drop box. I said of course and turned left instead of right. Agency is a small word that swings wide. Back home, we set the geranium on the porch where winter sun finds the boards by habit. Emily's laughter lingered in the doorway like steam. She took the stairs 2 at a time. I heard closet doors open and the soft drag of hangers. When she came back down, she was no longer wearing the sweater. She wore the navy dress, not zipped, just draped over a t-shirt, and she carried a tiny sewing kit I keep in a tin that once held mints. She sat on the top step and turned the little tin in her palm. Then she reached into the pocket of the dress and pulled out a single blue button, the glossy one I had pocketed the night before, and set in the sugar jar as a keepsake. She must have found it and reclaimed it, the way people reclaim their names, quietly, without audience. She rolled the button between her fingers while the dog, old and dignified, laid his head on her knee. The sky had slid toward pewter. A neighbor's wind chime spoke in an alphabet of small metals. I felt the itch to speak, to apologize for the world, to explain that other people's rules are not mirrors. I did none of it. I sat beside her and let the boards carry our weight. Silence is not surrender when it is chosen. Across town, cake would have been cut with a knife that photographs well. A planner would have checked boxes with professional relief. Someone would have said perfect twice in one sentence. Meanwhile, my granddaughter spun a blue circle of plastic and peered through its hole as if it were a viewfinder, framing the yard, the street, the slender moon beginning its work. She slipped the button into the pocket and patted it once like a promise. I breathed in the cold and let it hold me steady. I thought of the country club doorway years ago, my practical heels, and the chili dogs that tasted like freedom. I thought of Lydia at 7 in the sky blue coat with deep pockets, one for marbles and one for a folded picture of her mother. Pockets are for what you carry when you are not sure what you will need. Buttons are for when something wants to fall. I did not reach for the needle. I did not offer to stitch. Some tears of cloth teach you how to sit without fidgeting. I let the dog sigh. I let the wind chime spell our names without vowels. In my head, the words formed clean and stayed there. Some things do not need stitching. We keep them to remember where we were torn. My mother phoned on a Tuesday, her voice crisp as good china. She skipped pleasantries and went straight to logistics. Christmas Eve will be at the house as always. Everyone is coming. Lydia and Jake have confirmed. I wedged the handset between shoulder and cheek. Is Emily invited? I asked it plain, the way you test a bump, step before you put weight on it. Of course she is, my mother said. It is Christmas. Then softer. Helen, be gracious. No scenes. Peace is a useful word until it is used to hush the wrong person. I told her we would be there and thanked her. When I hung up, the house settled. Refrigerator hum. Emily upstairs reciting vocabulary. A plan took shape. It required no speeches. It required paper. I went to my room and pulled the shoebox from under the bed. The cardboard edges are soft from years of lifting. Inside lay the quiet records of a life nobody clapped for. Co-pays, a mechanic's invoice with grease prints, a postcard Emily mailed to herself from 5th grade camp so she would have something in the bag with her name. Beneath the receipts waited photographs that never made it into frames. Lydia at 7 in the sky blue coat I knit, cheeks bright, eyes trying to be brave. Lydia at 11 teaching Emily to whisk. At the bottom, folded exact, was the paper I needed. The credit union transfer from a decade ago. Lydia's tuition payment when her aid fell through. The ink had faded to gray, but the line still read paid in full. I moved my thumb across the date and remembered the lift in her voice when the registrar cleared her. The promise to pay me back when her feet found ground. Promises are seeds. Some sprout, some sleep. On the bedspread, I arranged the photos and receipts in small constellations. Make it into something, I told myself. Give memory a spine. I did not want ammunition. I wanted witness. At the craft store, the air smelled of cedar and glue. I chose a leather-bound album, the color of coffee with cream. The clerk added acid-free sleeves and photo corners. I took a fine black pen and cotton gloves because reverence is often nothing more than clean hands. Back home, I cleared the dining table and began. Page 1, the blue coat, the winter that tried to erase sidewalks. Next, the kitchen lesson, flowers suspended like weather. Then Emily at 3, Lydia at 16 with her permit, the dorm room with a window that would not open more than 2 inches. I wrote in small, steady letters, names, dates, the smells that carry through time, cinnamon, detergent, cold air. Every few pages, I paused to sip tea and to avoid crowding the margins with feelings better implied. Emily came for a snack and saw the spread. She did not step into the field of paper. She circled, reading the story without touching it. Her hand rested a second on the photo of Lydia in the coat. Then she looked at me, half question, half blessing, and went back upstairs. When the order felt right, I turned to the last page. I set the tuition transfer in the center and fastened it with corners so it could be lifted. Evidence should breathe. Beneath it, I wrote in a slower hand. Family means no one gets left behind or forgotten, even when outsiders insist you should. The sentence did not accuse. It stood like a post driven true. I closed the album and pressed my palm to the cover. Leather keeps warmth and remembers touch. I tied a narrow ribbon around it, not festive, not mournful, a sign that this was a gift and also a boundary. In the hall closet, I slid the album into a plain paper bag labeled "To Lydia" and set it beside scarves and the emergency lantern. Some plans do not need hiding. They need patience. That evening, my mother called again to confirm ham and scalloped potatoes and pie. She rehearsed her creed. We are a family. We do not air discomfort at the table. I told her I would bring cookies and a small package for Lydia. She paused, asked if the package would cause trouble. I said no. It would cause clarity. She changed the subject to seating cards and whether Emily preferred cider or punch. Cider, I said. And thank you. Later, Emily drifted downstairs in socks and asked if we could watch the game. We sat side by side. Between innings, she leaned her head on my shoulder with the careless weight, only the safe dare use. I thought of the album waiting in the closet and of paper that holds when voices disagree. The plan did not feel like strategy. It felt like housekeeping, opening a window in a stale room and letting the cold in. Before bed, I wrote a reminder on an index card and tucked it under the ribbon. Bring gentleness, bring backbone. Then I turned off the lights and stood for a moment in the doorway, the maple throwing latticework on the floor. Christmas was coming. I would carry one quiet thing into a loud house and set it down where everyone could see. The rest would take its shape from that. Martha was out early, sweeping the seam where her walkway met the street. She wore the same blue house coat she had worn since the mill closed. The pattern had faded to near memory. I carried the geranium to the porch rail and pinched a spent bloom. Petals came away like confetti that missed its cue. Martha looked up, saluted with her broom, and crossed over with the deliberate pace of someone who has learned there is no prize for hurrying. "You're up with the crows," she said. "Coffee?" "I have a pot," I answered. "Bring your own mug if you want the chipped one." She laughed and followed me inside. In my kitchen, she chose the chipped mug on purpose. She always does. We sat at the table where I had sorted photos the night before. The album was hidden in the hall, closet, but a single corner of a print had slipped under the salt shaker. Lydia in the blue coat, chin brave. Martha's eyes went to it, and then to me. "All right," she said. "Tell it." I told her about the invitation and the missing name, about Lydia's voice flattening while a man's voice murmured behind it, about the decision to stay home the day of the wedding, about burgers on the car hood and a movie that made Emily clap once, without meaning to. I told her about the plan for Christmas, the leather album, the tuition receipt that had slept under my bed for a decade. Martha listened the way good nurses listen. She used to be one before her back said no. She stirred her coffee with her finger and noticed the button sitting in the sugar jar like a tiny moon. I gave her the shape of my choice without dusting it with righteousness. When I finished, she set her mug down and looked at me as if measuring a hem. "Some folks forget the hands that fed them, Helen. You just made sure Emily won't forget who feeds her soul." The words landed like a small bell rung in a chapel no one uses anymore. I did not answer right away. Silence in front of the right person is not a void. It is a chair pulled out for truth. The kettle hissed where it had settled back onto heat. Old habits move even when you do not ask them to. "I don't want this to be revenge," I said. "I keep testing my reasons. If the reason is to make anyone hurt, I put it back on the shelf. I can't afford poison." Martha nodded. "Poison takes rent out of your bones before it ever touches theirs." "What do you call it then?" "Instruction," I said. "For Emily, for myself. Maybe for Lydia if she is listening. It is not a speech. It is a record. Paper keeps steady when voices tilt. Martha smiled into her cup. You always did grade your own homework. Good. Grade this too. Outside, a delivery truck sighed to a stop and started again. Milo thumped his tail under the table, and then reminded the room he was old with a soft groan. Martha leaned back. The chair creaked in the key of honest wood. She's 15, Martha said. That age you remember everything you are told you are. If what she hears is you are an afterthought, it will take years to teach her otherwise. Better to interrupt the lesson now. That's the word, I said. Interrupt. Martha tapped the table once with a knuckle. You did not slam a door. You set a place at a different table and invited the girl who needed feeding. That is not revenge. That is hospitality. I felt my lungs settle. Hospitality, the kind that brings blankets and bills paid, the kind that puts names on accounts and names back into mouths. Hospitality as resistance. The thought fit in my head like it had been measured. Martha asked to see the album. I fetched it from the closet and set it between us without opening. She ran a palm over the leather as if warming a horse before saddle. I untied the ribbon and turned pages. We moved through winters and school mornings and a dorm room that smelled faintly of whatever air is called when it still tries to be clean. When we reached the last page, she lifted the tuition receipt by its photo corners and exhaled. She did not say anything dramatic. She only placed it back gently, as if it were a baby returning to sleep. You going to write anything else? She asked. Only a line, I said. Family means no one gets left behind or forgotten, even when outsiders insist you should. Martha poured the last of her coffee into her saucer to cool, an old habit from hospital nights. Outsiders is a good word, even when they wear our rings or our last names. We sat like that, not fixing, not plotting. She told me about her robin that keeps pecking at the kitchen window, how she taped a paper sun to the glass so the bird would stop fighting its reflection. Sometimes you have to show a creature it is not being attacked, she said. It is only seeing itself. I thought about Lydia and the rooms she is trying to join. I thought about mirrors that only show you what the room prefers, and how a person might begin to mistake that picture for their own face. I thought about Emily, who has yet to choose her rooms, and my job, which is to keep her spine familiar with its own length. Martha stood, rinsed her cup at my sink, and kissed the top of my head as if I were the younger one. At the door, she paused. You need anything on the night. I need courage not to narrate, I said. Just to place the album and be quiet. You have it, she said. And if your mother starts with be gracious, tell her you are. To the girl who needs it. After she left, I watered the geranium and emptied the sugar jar of the blue button. I set the button on the album's cover for a breath, and then slipped it into my pocket. It clicked against my ring like a small metronome. I moved through the house, checking the ordinary things. The lock on the back door, the notch on the window, the light over the stove. My mind wanted speeches. My hands chose chores. The plan felt clean. It smelled like paper and soap. This is not punishment, I told myself. It is calibration. You steady the instrument so the song comes out true. You do it for the person learning to sing. You do it for the one who forgot the tune. You do it for the room that pretends not to hear. My mother's house glowed the way it always does on Christmas Eve. Pine garlands draped the banister. The good china flashed under lamplight. The air held a steady braid of roast chicken, cinnamon, and floor wax. Emily stepped in ahead of me with a tray of ginger cookies balanced like a crown. She had piped white stars on everyone. My mother kissed her on both cheeks and steered her toward the dining room as if choreography could guarantee harmony. Lydia arrived in a red dress that found every chandelier in the room and borrowed their light. Jake followed in a gray suit cut to say this was not his first tuxedo shop. He took my mother's hand with a practiced warmth and handed off a bottle wrapped in tissue. Lydia saw Emily and lifted her chin in a shy hello. The greeting hovered, then fell between them like confetti no one had agreed to throw. I carried a plain paper bag labeled to Lydia and found a chair by the end of the tree. Ornaments from 3 generations leaned into one another on the branches. A tiny paper angel Emily had made in 2nd grade hung beside a glass ballerina my sister loved in high school. Families are galleries that never curate, only accumulate. My mother called for cider. Cousins ferried napkins and forks. Someone tuned a radio and then remembered the station always crackled near the oven. We ate early. The conversation took safe roads, weather, parking, sales that were not what they used to be. Lydia sat between Jake and my mother, smiling a smile that looked sturdy from far away. Emily kept her shoulders straight, asking my uncle about his garden, refilling water glasses before anyone noticed they were low. I watched her hands move and thought of all the rooms they will steady that do not yet exist. Dessert plates appeared. My mother clapped for attention and announced the gift exchange just as the youngest cousins began to vibrate. She reached for a stack of wrapped boxes, then paused when I stood. "May I give one first?" She blinked, then nodded with a careful smile that said a dozen unspoken instructions. I picked up the paper bag and crossed to Lydia. "This is for you," I said. "It is not expensive. It is only ours." Lydia's palms flattened the paper smooth before she reached inside. The leather caught the light like water catching moon. She rested the album on her lap and untied the narrow ribbon with a neat tug. The room kept breathing, but softer. She opened to the first page. There she was in the sky blue coat, cheeks bright as new apples, chin up like a flag that will not drop. Her finger touched the corner of the photo, then she turned the page with 2 hands. Flower bloomed from a bowl to dust 2 small faces. Lydia at 11, Emily at 3. Whisk and wooden spoon held like instruments in a school band. Another page, another winter, another summer. A dorm room with a window that opened only enough to admit hope. A number written on a move-in box in my handwriting. A scribble of a shopping list tucked into a margin where a recipe should have been. Jake leaned in, polite at first, then puzzled. He glanced at me as if I might narrate. I did not. The point of a record is that it speaks in its own tense. The cousins' paper hats rustled. The clock on the mantel found its hour and told it twice. My mother shifted her weight and rearranged the napkins into stricter geometry. Lydia turned another page, another, and then stopped. Her hand hovered. The tuition transfer sat in the center under clear corners, ink faded but legible. She lifted it free and read the line with her mouth, not her voice. Paid in full. The date sat there, patient as a lamppost. For a heartbeat, her face emptied of performance and filled with a child I knew. She looked at me without lifting her head. Jake frowned. "What is this for?" "A keepsake," I said. He waited for a different answer and, finding none, returned his gaze to the page as if the paper itself had breached etiquette. Lydia placed the receipt back, very carefully, and smoothed the sleeve so the corners held true. She did not speak. The silence that followed did not roar or punish. It took its seat politely, then drove 3 nails into the floorboards so it would not tip. Emily had drifted to the doorway with the cookie tray, her eyes held steady. She was not asking me to rescue anyone from anything. My mother set down her fork and reached for the cider as if thirst had become ceremonial. An uncle coughed. The radio surrendered its carol to static and then remembered the tune. I kept my hands in my lap. I did not rush to soften, did not decorate the moment with context. Paper is merciful because it does not argue. It says only what it can prove. In that room of soft lighting and learned manners, a page did the work that sermons rarely finish. Lydia closed the album gently and kept her palm on the cover, like you might rest a hand on a sleeping child. She swallowed. Her voice came out small and clean. "Thank you." Then she looked toward Emily. The red of her dress did not reach her eyes this time. Emily nodded once, a gesture that meant, "I see that you see." Jake shifted. He tried a smile and found it had nowhere to land. He lifted his glass and said perfect, as if summoning a spell with no ingredients. My mother exhaled the way women exhale when the cake does not fall. She announced that the exchange would resume. Paper tore. Thank yous scattered. The room's pulse stumbled and then found its old beat. I returned to my chair and folded the ribbon into my pocket. The album stayed on Lydia's knees. She held it with both hands, the way you carry a brick you are not ready to set, but could. Emily passed the ginger cookies and took the last one for herself, without apology. I watched her bite and thought how a person learns to feed herself in front of people who once withheld a chair. The evening moved along because evenings do, but something had shifted one notch toward true. The silence did not break. It settled. It made room. It held. The front door sighed as Lydia caught my eye and tilted her head toward the porch. Music and paper kept up their chatter behind us, while winter air came in like a clean question. She closed the door softly and set her hands on the railing as if steadying a ship. "Dee Dee," she said, voice rougher than it had been inside. "I did not know you had done that. I did not know about the tuition. I did not know about half of those pictures." I stayed at the other end of the rail. The porch light turned our breath to pale flags. "You do not owe me thanks," I said. "But if you want Emily to believe you consider her family, this is the time to show her." She looked down at the steps where salt dusted the paint like frost. "Jake's family has rules. The wedding was a negotiation. I told myself it was only one day. I told myself Emily would understand." "She did," I said. "She understood where she ranked." Lydia flinched. The quiet clicked into place like a latch. A car went by. Tires whispered on cold pavement. "When Mom died," she said, still looking down, "I thought your house was a hallway to my real life. I did not see it was the life. I have been trying to trade it for rooms where I pretend I know the rules." "You are not the first to mistake a chandelier for daylight," I said. She huffed a laugh. I kept meaning to call Emily after the invitation. I waited for the calendar to open and the words to sound better. I kept waiting for someone else to make the phone ring so I could be gracious about it. "Waiting is a choice," I said. "So is calling." She nodded once. Her hands lifted from the rail and returned, as if the wood understood the weight. "I am ashamed," she said. "Shame is heavy when it says who you are," I said. "This is guilt. It has a handle. Carry it to the right place and set it down." She finally turned toward me. For a breath, The girl in the blue coat stood where the woman in red now was. "What is the right place?" "Emily," I said. The door opened. Warmth and cranberry air rushed out. Jake stepped onto the porch, shutting the noise behind him with a careful hand. He scanned our faces. "We should go," he said. "It has been a long day." "I am talking with my aunt," Lydia said. "You can talk in the car," he said. "Traffic is turning. The forecast says black ice. We need to be seen leaving on time." I kept my voice level. "You have my congratulations," I said. "We were just finishing." He offered me a smile that wore no heat. "Thank you for the album," he said. "It was unexpected." "That was the point," I said. A muscle jumped in his jaw. He turned to Lydia. "Let's go." Lydia straightened. She was not dramatic. She was exact. "You go ahead," she said. "I'm staying a few minutes. Next week I am taking Emily to lunch." He blinked as if the light had shifted. "What for?" "To apologize," she said. "To begin again." He glanced at the window, then back. "We have brunch with the Hendersons. You promised." "I am unpromising it," she said. "We will reschedule." He stepped closer, dropped his voice to a private register. "This is not the place." "It is exactly the place," she said. "The people who taught me what family is are inside." He looked to me, searching for a smoother. I folded my hands and gave him the polite face I reserve for salesmen who mistake silence for assent. The porch light hummed. A dry leaf skated across the walk. "Lydia," he said, "you are tired. Think about tomorrow." "I am," she said. "That is why I am saying it now." He opened his mouth. Then the door cracked and my mother's laugh spilled out, followed by a cousin tugging for help with batteries. Jake gave a public smile to private air, adjusted his cuff, and said he would warm the car. The door closed. The quiet returned. Lydia exhaled. "I am not brave," she said. "Brave is doing the next right thing while your hands shake," I said. "You are doing it." She dabbed one eye with a knuckle and let out a small laugh at herself. "I will call Emily in the morning," she said. "If she will see me." "She will," I said. "Bring her where she does not have to prove she belongs." She nodded, lips pressed together like a seam that finally met. We stood a moment longer, listening to the house settle. When we went back in, she carried the album. Not clutched, not displayed, simply carried, the way you carry a tool you plan to use. Jake stood at the window, phone in hand, coat on. He watched Lydia cross the room and read the change like a man who had missed a step he built himself. He lifted the keys. "I will pull around," he said. "I will be outside." "Take your time," Lydia said. He went. The door closed with a soft, true click. Inside, Carols returned to their notes. My mother straightened plates she had already straightened. Emily looked up. Lydia met her eyes and did not look away. The room shifted a fraction toward a better axis, as rooms do when someone tells the truth, and then stands still long enough for it to land. We got home from my mother's house with the smell of pine still in our coats. I set the album on the buffet and put the ribbon in a teacup so I would not lose it. The phone rang before I could take off my shoes. My mother's name filled the screen. I knew the pitch of the call before I heard her voice. I answered and braced the handset at my ear while I turned on the porch light for the dog. She did not say hello. She started with "you," put Lydia on the spot, and moved to "people were uncomfortable," and finished with, "This is not how we do Christmas." Her sentences had the tightness of a dress one size too small. I let her talk until the words ran out and the air of the kitchen thinned. She wanted me to agree that discomfort is worse than dishonesty. She wanted the room prettier than the truth. I kept my voice in the lane. I save for invoices and instructions. I said I gave a gift. It was paper and memory. It did not accuse. It did not shout. She said intention does not matter when feelings are hurt. I said sometimes feelings hurt because a fact finally walked in. She asked if I understood how hard Lydia's position was. Jake's family has standards. Appearances must be managed. The Hendersons were there last week, and she had been splendid. I said Emily was not there last week. Emily exists, and I am her grandmother. She switched tactics. Worry, then warning. You made trouble in my house. Jake looked offended. His mother asked me later if we keep receipts as entertainment. Be gracious, Helen. Lay things down. Let the past be framed and nothing more. I looked at the album on the buffet and said, my past is not decoration. It is foundation. It holds weight. She inhaled sharply and told me I had a knack for making simple things difficult. I said small lies make rooms easy. They do not make them safe. While we spoke, Emily hovered near the hall, pretending to sort scarves on the peg. When I finally ended the call with, I love you, and I will see you on Sunday, she stepped into the kitchen doorway. She was barefoot. The hem of her sleep pants brushed her ankles. Her face was clear in the porch light. Do you regret it? She asked. I shook my head. Number? Because you saw where I stand. She nodded once, a little older than 15, and opened the back door so Milo could nose the yard. We worked the kitchen back to calm. She stacked plates. I ran water. The steam fogged the window and drew lace on the glass. She asked if Lydia would really call. I said yes. I believed she would because she carried the album the way you carry a tool you intend to use. We wiped the counter and turned off the light over the stove. That switch has a soft click I have always liked. Ordinary sounds keep a house honest. My phone buzzed on the buffet. Messages lit the screen like moths. An aunt offered advice about optics. A cousin sent a thumbs up and then a private apology for not speaking up at the table. Another cousin asked if I could share the bakery's ginger cookie recipe. I set the phone face down. Not refusal, not surrender. Just a pause where breath could widen again. The album rested where I left it. Leather, dark as a night river. Steady. After Emily went upstairs, I added water to the dog's bowl and checked the lock on the back door. The living room held its leftover warmth. I sat at the small desk by the window and pulled a lined card from the center drawer. I keep good paper the way other people keep medicine. Close, labeled, ready for use when the hour is thin. I dated the top right corner and wrote, Dear Helen. Sometimes, you must put your own name on the report so you remember who is accountable. The letter was not for mailing. It was the kind that cleans the edges of a day. I wrote the sentence that had been tapping the inside of my chest since the porch. You worry about saving face. I worry about saving myself. I let the line sit by itself. That is how mirror truths do their best work. Then I added the rest. Short lines, like steps you do not want to miss. You did not perform. You placed a record. You did not shame. You made space for choice. You told the girl you love that she is not a guest in her own family. You told the woman you raised that history counts as much as seating charts. You did not slam a door. You opened a window in a room that was running out of air. I paused and listened to the house settle. Emily's tread crossed above me. A drawer slid. The faucet sang briefly and stopped. I kept writing, a ledger of what matters when rooms are polite and hearts are tired. You can live with the cost of clarity. You cannot live with the cost of teaching a child to accept erasure. If someone calls this trouble, let them. Trouble planted a blue coat and a college semester. Trouble fed a girl and kept a roof over her head. Trouble is another word for work. I finished with a simple instruction for the days to come. Speak once, then live it. Let paper do the talking when voices turn theatrical. Remember that silence, when chosen, is not surrender. It is architecture. Sign your name steady, then sleep. I folded the card once and slid it into an empty envelope. No address, no stamp. I opened the shoebox from under the bed and tucked the envelope between the tuition receipts photocopy and a photo of Lydia whisking beside a much smaller Emily. The box closed with a soft, faithful sound. I turned out the desk lamp and stood for a moment, letting darkness take the room back to rightful size. Upstairs, a door clicked. Milo sighed in his sleep. In the quiet, I tried on the word regret again and found it did not fit. The seams pinched. The shoulders wouldn't move. Conviction settled better. It breathed. I climbed the stairs with the same care I use when carrying soup. At the landing, I touched the wall like a blessing and thought of the porch, the rails cold under our hands, and Lydia's voice when she said next week. The night held. The line I had written hummed like a small engine. Tomorrow would ask for the same steadiness. I already knew my answer. A month slipped by, the way winter prefers. Steady. Useful. On a Thursday, my phone buzzed with a message from Lydia, addressed to Emily and copied to me. Lunch at the old diner on Park. Noon, her treat. Emily showed me the screen to share it. I told her I would be home when she returned. She dressed like herself. Jeans, a soft sweater, hair in a braid. At the door, she patted the pocket of the navy dress as if checking for a heartbeat, then laughed and took only a scarf. On the porch, she asked if I needed anything from town. A library drop, I said. After the door closed, the house felt longer. I set towels to soak, threaded a needle for a neighbor's hem, and let a pot of soup find its simmer. The radio abandoned weather and played standards. I kept my hands busy so my mind would not direct a scene that was not mine to direct. When tires crunched the gravel, I stood. Emily came in with the cold on her cheeks and the smell of bacon in her hair. She leaned against the wall in the posture of someone who did something brave and did it well. In her hands, she held a small bag from the gift shop next to the diner, tied with a thin white ribbon. She apologized, Emily said, before I could ask. She said she should have stood up to that rule. She said she chose the room over me and she is trying to choose her way back. She said a sorry should buy something. So she bought lunch, and then she gave me this. She drew out a tiny frame, no bigger than a postcard, with a felt back and a clear pane. Inside, mounted on linen, sat a single blue button. The button was glossy and familiar. The nick on one hole proved my needle once slipped. On the paper beneath the fabric, Lydia had stamped a line. For the girl who was never too young for my heart. Emily's throat moved. She said she found it on the mantel and thought it belonged where I could see it. She asked if I wanted help sewing the other buttons tighter. She said I did not have to forgive today. I could let the frame do the talking. I let the words settle. How was the pie? I asked. Cherry, Emily said. We split a slice and argued about lattice width. She promised to stop sending pictures of dresses I will never wear and start sending recipes she actually makes. She told me the pool schedule like it was weather, then said she might be tired of reports. She looked tired at Christmas, I said. She looked like Lydia today, Emily said. She asked about the bakery. She asked if I would show her a campus when I start touring. She asked if it would be all right to come to the spring concert, even without an invitation. What did you say? I said the door swings both ways, Emily said. I told her I would like that. She set the frame on the table and touched the glass as if checking the temperature of a sleeping child. She told Jake she was staying. Lunch first. No errands, no appearances. He did not like it. She said not liking is not the same as forbidding. I stirred the soup and did not ask about Jake's tone. Information deserves to find its own chair. Do you want to tell me everything? I said. I told you what matters, she said. I ladled soup into bowls and set them down with the weight of simple things. I am glad you ate. I am glad she apologized. I am glad you brought home something that will not wilt. Emily laughed. Then her eyes shone the way eyes shine when the lid on a worry loosens. She burned her tongue and laughed again. She asked what she could do next, she said. I told her to call me before the calendar fills with other people's names. That is a fine next, I said. She looked at the frame. Should we hang it in the hall? It is yours, I said. Put it where you will see it in the morning. She carried it to the stairs and set it on the newel post. The blue caught the afternoon and held it. She came back and finished her soup like a person with company. We cleaned the kitchen without ceremony. She washed. I dried. The dog snored. My phone buzzed with messages I did not open. We let the day stand. When the water was off and the counter dry, Emily wiped a circle on the fogged window and drew a quick check mark in the clear. For today, she said. So, I remember it counted. It counted, I said. She went upstairs with the frame in both hands, careful as a lantern. I sat at the small desk and looked at the empty page in my letter book. I wrote nothing. Some victories prefer wood and glass. I listened to her steps cross the floor, the pause in the doorway, the place where she must have chosen a nail. The house found its old length again. Ordinary. Right. I put the ladle away and left the soup on low in case Lydia called. I did not hope for it. I made room for it. Spring came in the pail, green of new leaves and the soft thud of baseballs against chain link. Lydia called on a Tuesday morning. Her voice was steadier than at Christmas. She said the house was finally ready. Would we come by on Saturday for coffee and a tour? Emily was at school, so I told Lydia yes, and added that we would bring scones. A kitchen names its welcome with crumbs. The neighborhood wore fresh mulch and careful hedges. On Saturday, the sky held that clean blue Ohio brings out when it is proud of itself. Emily balanced a bakery box on her knees while I turned into Lydia's drive. The house was brick and glass, not showy, just alert. Lydia opened the door before we reached the porch. She had flour on her cheek and a dish towel over her shoulder, which is how I like to see people I love. Come in, she said, and she said it like a promise. The air smelled like lemon and coffee. Jake's shoes were by the mat. He was not home, and she did not offer a reason. We stepped into a living room that had already learned where light prefers to land. On the far wall hung a new photograph in a simple black frame. 3 faces, ours, caught mid-laugh on the porch at my mother's house. It was the angle I never get to see when I am inside a moment, the angle that proves joy can hold still. On the console table beneath the photograph, folded precisely, lay the sky blue coat I knit the winter after June died. Lydia had found a way to make it part of the room without turning it into a museum. The wool looked soft and ready, Pockets deep, buttons bright. She touched the sleeve with a fingertip. "I wore it till spring fought me out of it," she said. "I think it belongs where I can remember how it held." We carried coffee to the couch. Lydia set out plates and moved the scones as if arranging them could make them multiply. She asked about Emily's geometry test, about my neighbor's hip, about whether the geranium had survived the last cold snap. The conversation had no shine to it. It had weight. She was not performing a home. She was offering one. "Come see the rest," she said. We followed the hallway where afternoon light made stripes on the floor. She opened a door on the right. "This one is yours," she told Emily. The room had been painted a soft gray that breathed. On the desk sat a reading lamp, a jar of pencils sharpened to actual points, and a small corkboard with 2 blank pins ready for whatever names Emily might need to tack in place. On the dresser were photographs in simple frames. Emily at the bakery holding a paper box. Emily on the porch with Milo. Emily at 8 in a striped shirt, tongue out while she squinted into flour dust. The bed had a quilt the color of ripe peaches. In the corner perched a chair by the window with a folded throw. The kind of corner that invites books to stay open. Emily stood in the doorway and then stepped inside slowly, as if the floor might vanish if she hurried. She ran a finger along the dresser's edge, then paused where a small frame leaned. The blue button shined under glass. Beneath it, on the linen backer, sat a note printed in tidy letters. "For the girl who was never too young for my heart." The same line Lydia had given her at lunch. This time anchored where mornings begin. Emily looked over her shoulder at me. Her face did not ask permission. It registered gratitude and surprise finding each other at the same time. She set her palm flat on the quilt, pressed once, and nodded, like a person who hears a room say her name correctly. I stayed in the hallway. Thresholds tell the truth about belonging. Light from the window fell past me and laid a warm band at my feet. Lydia came to stand beside me, shoulder to shoulder, as we watched Emily open the desk drawer and find lined paper, plain envelopes, a book of stamps. "For letters," Lydia said. Emily smiled. "Maybe for lists," she answered, and slipped one stamp into her pocket, like a secret, with good manners. We toured the rest of the house, the kitchen with a real pantry, a laundry room that made even chores look possible, a small table by the back door for keys and promises. Lydia showed us a shelf where she had put cookbooks that use butter without apology. The refrigerator held a magnet shaped like Ohio. "I stole the idea," she said, and we both laughed. Back in the living room, Lydia reached for the blue coat and handed it to Emily. "Try it," she said. Emily slid her arms in. The sleeves were long. She pushed them up and grinned. The coat did not fit. It blessed. She slipped it off carefully and laid it back the way Lydia had, palms smoothing the wool as if learning a prayer. We sat for a while without narrating it. Lydia told us about a new schedule at work and a boundary she had drawn with a supervisor who liked to send Saturday emails. She said she was learning that no is a complete sentence, yes is a contract. She did not mention Jake, and I did not press. Some names ask to rest until they can speak in their own tenses. Emily wandered back to her room and began putting a book on the chair, then took it off again, then put it back. A ritual of claiming. I stood at the door frame and let the late light pour around me. Dust motes rose and fell, quiet as apologies offered well. The house sighed the way new houses do when their people teach them who they are. "Thank you," Lydia said, still beside me, her voice level, for not embarrassing me into change, for setting down paper and letting me read it myself. "You did the reading," I said. "You did the turning." She smiled, not the party smile, the one that begins in the eyes. "Stay for supper," she said. "I make a decent roast when I remember not to hurry it." "We can stay," I said. "We have time." The note on the dresser caught the light again. Emily lifted the frame and held it at arm's length as if checking a level. "Here," she said, and set it on the windowsill where mornings would find it first. She turned, saw us in the doorway, and motioned me in with a small wave of her fingers. I crossed the threshold, and the room took us both without a ripple. The sun moved another inch. The coat lay ready. The photograph on the wall did not blink.